Hi, my name is
But
Yore, and I am the Director of International Programs at SAGE, which is the largest organization in the world dedicated to improving the lives of LGBTIQ older adults. I'm here today with Gloria Careaga, a pioneer in the field of LGBTIQ advocacy and human rights. This interview is part of a collection of storytelling with queer elders from all over the world. We are especially thrilled to have Gloria here with us today, whose work I so admire. Gloria and I have had the opportunity to collaborate over the years at various forums, and I'm always so appreciative of the opportunity to have thought partnership with Gloria, working to bridge divides between older and younger lesbians like ourselves. So I'll start with Gloria. Could I ask you a little bit about your background? Where were you born? When were you born? Share a little bit about your childhood, just as a starting place to get to know you.
hi, thank you very much for this chance to have the to bring the opportunity to talk about my own life and how I now feel becoming older. I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, in Mexico, and this is a kind of conservative city, but with a lot of influence from the United States. Guadalajara has been a very important city for immigrants from the USA, mostly in the retired process that they come to live to Mexico, and they found that this was a very pleasant place to live. So it's a kind of very, it's a I can say that more than conservative, there are many conservative people in Guadalajara, but more than conservative, I see people, traditional people, that they have some values and some values much more related with the culture of Mexico, and but with many influence or much influence from the United States because of this exchange that we have been having for many years. So yeah, I studied at an American school when I was a child. So it was the influence in my life was bigger. But my father and my mother were parents who were very proud of being Mexicans. And my father especially wanted us to know all the countries, so we traveled all around and had the chance to experience different cultures, as Mexico is a very diverse country. So I had a very good childhood. I was happy, and I didn't have really big problems during my childhood. Maybe because of this educational system in which I was, there was a big mixture within the school. So we arranged to have different kind of perspectives and nationalities in there.
And Gloria, when and how did you first realize you were a lesbian? When did you begin identifying as a lesbian, and what was your coming out process like?
Well, I don't know if I had a very clear idea of being a lesbian, but I began feeling this attraction to women when I was about 14 years age. And because of maybe because of the ideology in my family, I didn't felt much repressed. Not from my family. I didn't feel any repressed from my family, and I began having a kind of relation with a schoolmate, and we knew that it was not there was not a social acceptance of having a love with another woman, but and we cared in the school. We were kind of hidden in the closet, but but I didn't have any difficulty with my family. I mean, they knew that she was my friend, that we loved each other, that we were all the time exchanging. The only problem that my mother once shoot out uh, was that, how long are you going to be on the telephone? I need the telephone. But, but she didn't say anything about who I was talking to. So that makes the idea about the kind of relation that we had.
Yeah.
Even when a little older, my father's used to, my parents used to travel a little, and in many cases they asked me, as I was the only person living with them in that stage, they used to ask me, what are you going to do? We are going to be out for a week or for 2 weeks. What are you going to do? Are you going to stay at home, or are you going to sleep somewhere else? And with whom? And that was all. I used to say, no, my friend is coming to sleep with me here, or I'm going to her house, and they never ask about what kind of relation is this, or what are you doing? No, nothing about it. So I was very free about it.
So in 1992, you and Patria Jimenez founded the lesbian organization Sister Juana's Closet. And since then, you've gone on to found a number of very influential LGBTIQ advocacy organizations, both in Mexico and internationally. Can you describe what inspired you to build these coalitions and what your work over the years has looked like with other feminist and lesbian activists?
Well, Patria and myself, we we met some spaces, some lesbian spaces in Europe. When we were doing this, participating in different conferences or activities in the international arena, we met different organizations, and in some cases, some specific places dedicated specifically for lesbians. So when we were discussing about this in Mexico, we began asking, how come that Mexico City, as big as it is, have no space for lesbians? Patria had a very long life experience on lesbian issues, but not having a specific space for open to all the lesbians to come. So we began discussing about it, and we decided that we were going to build on a space in which lesbians could come any day of the week to talk and to have some activities with among lesbians. So that's why we began this space. Closet de Sor Juana began in '94, and we opened a space in which lesbians came to have some reflection group, we say, some groups in which we can reflect what happens, why are we suffering this kind of discrimination or violence in the different spaces. And we try to push the group to find out the political, religious, economical issues that were involved in this, and that this was not our own fault, that it was that the system, the patriarchal system, was the responsible of that situation. So it was very interesting to hear the different stories and to reflect about why does it happen. But we have beyond the reflection groups, we had some workshops and some meetings, even social activities. So I think that it was a very enrichment space. In the last 10 years, maybe we began asking them which are the activities you are more interested, and they began asking for languages, painting, many other issues that we didn't have at the beginning. So it was very interesting to see the participation of the lesbians in the different activities. And Fundación Arcoiris was founded in 98, and this was much more focused to respond to the demand of some gay men that were talking that we were a couple, a very strong political couple, and that they were saying that why we were interested only in working in favor of women and not talking about LGBT as a whole. So we began working with the Fundación Arcoiris. But Fundación Arcoiris was at the beginning, as we didn't have volunteers work, as you know, lesbians are much more related to volunteers, but LGBT were not really involved in this. So we began our activities much more linked to the academia. So we developed there with the UNAM, we developed there some courses, diplomas, and some seminars when we were discussing about how to research, how to teach about it, and how to deal with some policies. Because in the diplomas, it was very interesting that many governmental people came to the diplomas to understand about it. So it was very enrichment to hear the experiences of them and the questions they had. So, but maybe after 5 or 6 years, we began working outside the academia and trying to develop our own perspective. But Fundación Arcoiris has not lived out the relation with the academia because Fundación Arcoiris has been very tight to theoretical frameworks to understand what's happening, as we are pushing much more a perspective in which that the society has to understand that we are not only in the bars or in the clubs, but we are we have an everyday life. And we are related to many of the social problems that other populations are facing. So, but this needs a lot of discussion and studies, and that is what we are doing now.
That's great. And how, Gloria, over the years doing this work, have you handled backlash, criticism, even perhaps violence from those who opposed your work?
Well, I think that at the end in Fundación Arcoiris, some of the gay men who were pushing us to organize this group were not comfortable with the policies that Fundación Arcoiris has, as feminism, intersectionality, you know, and even we have positive actions with the women's participation and the feminist perspective. So they were not very comfortable with this, and they split. So we have been engaging some other gay men in the process, and so those who are really interested in the cause and in learning about how to change the world. So some of the criticism that we have received come from these gay men and other gay men, leaders, gay men that are not comfortable with lesbians, but even much more worse when lesbians are successful or have some leadership. They become very, very uncomfortable with that. In other cases, I think that I have not received much criticism myself. At the university, I had some criticism at the beginning. There are 2 or 3 professors, very machos professors, and they are like gossiping about what's being a lesbian, and how can you be in a classroom with a lesbian as a teacher?
Yeah.
They discuss with the students, but I told them that they are making me much more popular because they didn't know about it, and now that they want to know and they want to
Right.
discuss. So
Yeah. Yeah. Um, no, that's really helpful. And I'm wondering, based off of everything you just shared, what advice you would give to younger lesbian activists who want to create change but may be dissuaded or anxious due to the political environment or scared for their physical safety. What would you say directly to younger lesbian activists who fear backlash?
I think that the social minorities are a big group. I mean, we need to engage or to understand the different kind of discriminations that people are facing. I mean, the discrimination against LGBT is mainly on sexuality issues or gender issues, but I think that there are a lot of people who are suffering of discrimination because of their other dimensions. And it is very important that we have a wide knowledge about the human rights movement. The human rights movement is really wide, and we need to understand the different dimensions people are working with and how these dimensions are related to our own life. So we can build them linkages, alliances with other movements, and they will protect us.
Hmm.
We are engaged with a wide network of human rights in Mexico, in which we are more than 300 organizations, and we exchange a lot, understanding who, what is the cause or what is the challenge they are facing. And I think that we have been much more
Yeah.
stronger now because of these relations. So we can be protected with this human rights movement in each country.
Hmm.
Because I think that authorities will all the time will be stigmatizing
Hmm.
us in a moral way. So we need to to destroy that stereotype
Yeah.
and we can do it working with some others, making these alliances, and
Yeah.
it brings us a very different perspective, not only about ourselves in these spaces, but about ourselves in the fight in the struggle
Hmm.
in favor of the human rights because we have a better understandings about ourselves too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, you spoke just now a lot about how building coalitions is very strategic and important. And I know, being familiar with your work, that this is something that's been an undercurrent of your work for decades. And I'm just wondering how you have observed the global, international, both lesbian and then just feminist movements. How have they changed over time? Are there things that bring you hope now that you're looking at trends as they evolve? Are there things that particularly concern you?
Well, the problem is that everything has changed, not only us. I mean,
Yeah.
the political framework now is very weird. It's not easy to understand who is left, especially in Latin America. It's, but it's very difficult because in some cases there are some governments that identify themselves as left governments, and they are not left at all because they are just populist. But
Right.
Populism is not a left.
Mm.
So we have to be very clear about those things and to build on our own ideology. I think that we cannot be like a jelly.
Mhm. Too flexible, maybe.
We have to be
I
very
like
clear
jelly as the
about
metaphor. Yep.
what is my ideology,
Uh,
what am I looking for, and we have to jump out of ourselves. I mean, we need to to have our rights guaranteed, but we are looking for a social change, a new world in which everybody are free and for peace, we have to be very much more alert about the different problems and conflicts that the humanity are facing now. And how are we positioned
mm,
talking about these different problems?
yeah.
Because in many cases, I hear here in Mexico that when I am discussing about some uh, conflicts that are happening in Europe or in the Middle East, that they say, but what's that? It's not related to our rights. And I say, how come
Hmm.
you think that there's not impact with our own safety?
Yeah.
So I think that we have to be very clear that we are part of this world and that we have to be alerted or to take care about the different conflicts that the population or the world are facing.
Yeah.
So this is the way in which we can define our route, our path. But if we are not clear about it and we are just looking for ourselves, for my commodity,
Mhm.
we are lost.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And
Um,
that so in that sense, it will be much more easier to identify the backlash and the risk that
mm.
some governments and or some politicals are are arising, and how are we going to deal with those?
Gloria, I want to turn a little bit now to your experience of aging, of growing older. Um, in your personal experience and then also in your political work, I would love to hear what you observe some of the unique challenges facing both older lesbians are and then just, aging LGBTIQ folks. Something you and I have talked about before is that so much of the LGBTIQ movement is focused on youth and that our elders and our elder voices and perspectives get lost. So I would just love to hear, yeah, your thoughts on that and your personal experiences growing older.
As far as I see, in most of the spaces now, most of the people are young people. In some cases, very young people that are just arriving to these spaces, and the oldest are disorganized. We are not really linked, even when we know each other and that we can identify. It's not easy that the same people come to the spaces in which we are doing the advocacy work or the linkages. So it is very difficult to really mirror ourselves and to identify what's happening among us. So we have some of the difficulties is that we have to deal with the elder by ourselves
Yeah.
because you have to open your space to claim for the recognition for the voice.
Mhm.
But in many cases we don't have it. Even when on myself I identify that many people still look for me to discuss, to learn, to talk about what's happening, and they recognize my experience in different fields. So it's very grateful for me and even enrichment for me to talk to people with young people about these situations. but it's not easy. Not
Yeah.
most of the youngers are interested in having this kind of conversation,
Right.
but some are really interested in it. So I think that this is something that we have to build on spaces in which we have these intergenerational exchanges, so that we can really learn from each other. Because I am old enough, but I have a lot to learn
Of
still,
course. Yeah, we all do, right?
and I want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Gloria, what do you think are some of the barriers preventing older and younger LGBTIQ people from being in conversation with each other, from working with each other?
I think that some of the obstacles are the fundings,
Okay. Hmm.
and some others are the belief that we are done,
Right.
that we do not need to be on those spaces anymore,
Yeah.
and that these are the new generation spaces. So this perspective obstacles the possibilities of exchange among us. And maybe this. I see that in this stage of the story, being young is the best.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of values put another obstacle, because what are you doing here? Huh? That's kind of questions that we don't need anymore, these old people.
Yeah.
And because of this new culture of the, how you say, as trash,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
you have to put out what you don't need.
Right. Right.
So it seems that we are we are not more in the scene.
Right.
The scene is now for others, for the new ones.
Right.
It's a pity, because the new ones not not having this very clear ideology or path about where to go, how to go in that, how to build that path.
Mhm.
It's not easy, and maybe there are much more risk for the cause, for the movement, if we are not to get all together, building all together the way we have to conquer our objectives.
Right. So, Gloria, I want to, I think we're wrapping up, and I want to give you some time to share any last thoughts or words of wisdom with us. Again, just so appreciative of being in conversation with you as always. Um, I, when you're thinking back on your life and your work, and of course you have so much more to accomplish and do, you're such a busy person. Um, but just looking back, at least for this moment, what legacy do you hope to leave behind? How do you hope to be remembered?
Well, I like to be named as an academic activist,
Hmm.
and I think that I like it very much. And I have been dealing in the last year with some academics in which I am working with, and asking them, why are you not activist?
Mm.
Why do you like only to be in this small group, in this small room, and not to open the door to really know much more about what's happening in the everyday life of the people?
Mm.
So I think I am very happy to have this concept concept of myself, and that people recognize it. Not It's not comfortable all the time, because in many cases academics think that I are more activist than academia,
Sure.
and the others
And vice versa,
activists
perhaps.
say,
Yeah.
no, you are too academic.
Right. It's a
So,
bridging of worlds that are, I think, like seen as opposed sometimes. So
so
it's a
it's
positionality.
but I like that,
Yeah.
and that people really can identify that I have been building my own position, my
Yeah.
my own political position, and that I try to be as much as I can, very clear about it, and I not to defraud
Hmm.
on this position.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, those are, for what it's worth, all things that I see and respect in you. So before we wrap up, it seems we're coming to an end. Thank you so much again. It's a pleasure as always. Is there any story from your life or topic that we haven't covered today that you want to make sure you share or say today before we close?
I don't maybe the difference about working in the international arena and the national arena. I
Sure,
think that
absolutely.
it's very different. Uh, I think that we face very different challenges
Mhm.
in the international arena. I think that we have this diversity of cultures and to understand the scars and the arguments of the governments from different regions is not easy. But and 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 building those networks among lesbians and feminists to come together in the work is not easy, but I really feel that that's why it really enriched me very much.
Mm.
It opened my perspective. I had new visions about everything with this international work, and I had the opportunity to have very good teachers and alliance with feminists that I worked with. So I think that it was very good. But we cannot leave the national work. And this experience at the international arena brought me many tools to deal with the government in my country. And I can identify, as I have the picture of the United Nations, in which I identify who can I work on, who can I approach to. It's the same at the national arena. I have to see all the governmental people and to identify who can I work with and how are we going to approach to the different areas. So I think that it's very interesting to reflect on that different kind of work that we have been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Gloria. I think that's a wonderful note to end on. It's been a pleasure and honor as always, and I'll stop our recording here. Thank you.
Thank you.